Hello, friends. I have never met before. I'm so grateful to be with your community today at this point, at this moment in our history. It really does feel historical to me. We started this decade only 6 months ago, even though it feels like it was about 6 years ago. And we all started this decade kind of saying, see you later, 2019. Nice decade. We are moving on. We've got like these grand goals for a new decade, having 2020 vision. And we like stormed into this year thinking it would be a very different decade. And this was like our year. This was like our moment in time. And just 3 months later, we got smacked. Our world got turned upside down with this global pandemic. And then there was an 8-minute, 46-second video of the murder of George Floyd just a few weeks ago. And it feels like the compilation or the intersection of these two really significant things is putting us in a moment in time that truly is historical. And I think that these last few months have been a revealing of sorts about who we really are and who we want to become, both individually, but then also collectively and communally and as a whole country. This pandemic and systemic racism are cracking us open in ways that I certainly have not seen in my lifetime. And those who are much older would say, yeah, this is historic. This is something that we have never lived in before. And most of it has felt really painful, if I'm going to be honest, if we're going to be honest. But it's felt necessary at the same time. Matt told me when we talked earlier this week that he described this period of time as an apocalypse. And it certainly seems accurate and feels apocalyptic at times. Like, is this the way it all goes down? Is this the way that the world is ending? But it's felt apocalyptic because it has been this great unveiling of what has been just under the surface for a very, very long time. And even though we have never met, I'm staring into my computer to be with you all this morning. I wanted to show up here today, not as some speaker that lives on the other side of the country that's popping in for a week, but I wanted to show up here today really honestly and really vulnerably about where I am at this point in 2020, having 2020 vision. I hit another wall this week. In fact, just 24 hours ago, I was laying on the couch and I felt like I couldn't move, felt like I couldn't breathe. I just felt leveled again by the weight of what has been happening in our country and in our communities and our homes. I feel wrung out right now. I feel cracked open. I feel really weary. These last 3 months have been incredibly hard, and I've done a lot of hard things. I felt really terribly sad over the last 24 hours or so. And I think it's kind of this piling on, this exponentially increasing effect of 12 weeks of quarantine. And then included in that was this shit show that we call distance learning. I've got 3 kids in elementary school, and y'all, distance learning is a thing. God bless teachers. I'm a fan. But man, I did not sign up to be a part of this. And then just a few weeks ago, George Floyd's murder just leveled me. And so it's weird because we started this year having these grand visions of like having 2020 vision in our country or in our lives and thinking this is going to be the best year yet. And yet it really does feel like we actually are getting really perfect vision on what's going on and what is underneath the surface for me, for you, for our country. And it is giving us more clarity and a sharper vision maybe than we've ever had before in our lifetimes about what really matters and about who we are and about what we're about. And all of this is certainly something that's happening on this collective level, but for me, it's really personal. I'm white. I grew up in the Midwest, actually, predominantly Illinois and Indiana. I grew up in very white dominant spaces, hearing jokes and clutching purses and walking the other side of the road and talking about the Black community as very other than me. And then I ended up marrying a brown man, Spanish speaking family that turned some heads in my family and expanded like what my world could look like. And then we ended up adopting 2 Black babies. And my son is about to be 12. It's the same age of Tamir Rice when he was murdered on a playground with a toy gun. I have a daughter who's 10, who is wrestling with her dark melanated skin. And so these conversations and what has erupted on a national level with protests and media and all over the world really is not just something that is out there. It is very much in here. It is in my home. It is in my blood now. So this conversation is really personal. What is going on for us is not just something that is other or an issue. It is personal for me. Meister Eckhart was known to have said that the shell must be cracked apart if what is in it is to come out. For if you want the kernel, you must break the shell. And so there's this cracking apart that is happening. And that cracking apart is an opportunity for transformation for me and for you. And the temptation, I think, for us in all of the overwhelmness and the uncertainty and the instability and the questions and the resistance and all of the stuff that is coming out of this cracked open shell, this temptation now is that we will resist or simply learn more information about the Black experience or about anybody that is other than you in this pandemic, in this racial outrage that is taking place in America. And so we've got this temptation, but there's also this opportunity for transformation. And friends, I want to encourage and challenge us today that if we take the path of resistance to what is being cracked open within us right now, we will waste an opportunity. I was talking with a girlfriend this week and I just said, there's been so much that has been bad and hard and terrible about COVID-19 and about the murder of another Black man in our country. But I want to be transformed. I want for us to learn from this. There are good things that are emerging, because if not, then this whole thing is just a giant waste. Like what is the point? So don't resist. That's going to waste this opportunity. But the other temptation, I think, is for us to become learners and to increase the information that we have, to watch news endlessly, to scroll through social media, to click on links and look at images and see, what is happening out there, and to increase all of this information that we have. But information will not change our hearts. And it certainly is not going to change our behavior. I believe that this is a defining spiritual moment, both collectively and individually. So if there's one thing that you remember from me being a part of your time together this morning, I want you to remember this. And it's that information does not equal transformation. The goal is not to increase information right now. It is to experience transformation. Information is to do exactly what the word says. It's to inform us. And never before in history have we had so much access to information. I mean, you can sit in front of any device and you can type with your thumbs or type with your fingers, anything into a Google search engine. And within a second, you will have links to hundreds of things that are connected to the idea or the question that you have submitted in your search. So we have access to information unlike ever before. If you want to know the answer to something, you can find it. There is content never ending on Google. You can figure out how to survive a global pandemic. You can figure out where to find toilet paper. You can relearn history through a non-white lens on Google. You can understand more of the Black perspective as an American. You can Google search the top 5 books to read about white privilege or anything else that you're curious about. Google is your friend. Content is readily available. Information is there. But information alone does not transform us. In fact, self-awareness produces the illusion of transformation. Just because we now know something does not mean that it has actually transformed us. In fact, it can actually be one of the greatest hindrances to transformation. Because once we know, we think that we embody, we think that we are changed by that information. So while self-awareness creates this illusion of transformation, there actually is a different pathway if we want to be transformed in this season. And I think the image of a butterfly actually shows us what true transformation and that process really looks like. Transformation is a shift in purpose. And a butterfly shows us how to do it. It shows us what it looks like. A butterfly actually begins as an entirely different thing. It starts as a caterpillar, something that crawls around the ground, something that is furry and has all these little legs and kids like to play with and hold in their hands, and it scurries or like crawls along the ground. Transformation begins with this caterpillar. But in order for that caterpillar to become the fullness of what it was designed and created to be, to fly, it must enter a dark cocoon. And for decades, scientists were really curious about what actually happened inside of a cocoon. It kind of was a black box of sorts. A caterpillar comes in and then a butterfly comes out, but what actually happens in that cocoon for that period of time? And science is amazing. And so eventually scientists found their way inside to take a look at what was happening within that cocoon of a butterfly. And what they discovered was pretty phenomenal. They discovered that that caterpillar actually almost totally disintegrated and it became a goo. It became just totally became a whole entire different substance in order for something new to be formed. From the outside, like you see a butterfly that emerges from a cocoon and flies, and it's beautiful, and it looks like that moment happens in an instant. And sometimes transformation feels like it happens instantaneously, or that it can take place in a moment. But really, transformation, more often than not, is like the process of a caterpillar entering a dark place and allowing it to dissolve what was in order for something new to be recreated. And so this rebuilding process is what I think might be happening to us as we are dissolving, as we are becoming goo as individuals, but also as a community, as a culture. I think one of the things that I love about Americans and about people is that we want to fly. Like there's this really deep desire for us to like reach our full potential and become the fullness of who we've been created to be and leave it all on the field, right? Just to become all that we've been made to be, reach our fullest potential. But that doesn't happen by accidents. That kind of transformation doesn't happen just accidentally. Transformation more looks like us going into dark and painful places, becoming goo, and then entering into this rebuilding process of becoming something entirely new. In these difficult and awkward conversations that we're having in our homes and in our country about racism and white privilege and systemic injustice, the one thing that I know to be true is that pain and relationships can change everything. Those two things are almost like the magic pill to becoming goo so that transformation takes place. In fact, I don't know of two other things that have been more transformative in my life than the pain of my life and the people of my life. So wherever you are in this process right now, and however it is that you're processing what is happening in our country or in your home, I want to encourage you with a couple of things today. The first thing that I want to encourage you to do is to get close to the pain. Don't run from it. Pain is your friend in this way, because pain is this great teacher that we have. Pain that is unavoidable, pain that you just feel on a cellular level, is not intended to be wasted. It is intended to transform you. And I believe that pain can actually become a platform or a position or a place for you to have supernatural power in this world. that pain is not to be wasted, but that pain is actually to allow you to become the fullness of who you've been created to be. So get close to the pain, embrace it, listen to what it has to teach you instead of running from it and resisting it. That's the great waste right there, my friends. So open yourself, open your heart to a different perspective from your own. Hear the cries of the people right now. Go online. Sit down and have a conversation with a friend who is different from you. Open yourself up to a perspective and to a posture that is unlike something you have experienced before. Get close to the pain. Allow it to transform you. Allow that pain, allow that empathy to instruct you, not just to inform you, but to transform you. And then get close to people. Relationships change everything. You know, I don't know that I had met one single person of color until I graduated from high school. That might not entirely be true, but pretty darn close. I really did not know anyone who was different from me, who had a different worldview and life experience and religious background and color of skin and just experience within our country. And so for my entire adult life, I have been in pursuit of relationships who will teach me more about myself, about this place that we share with one another, and about our world. And those relationships have changed me on the deepest of levels. Pain has been a guide, but people have been transformational. Racism is an issue for us until it becomes personal, until you see it in the eyes of another human, until you hear their stories, until you hear their experiences and their fears and their longings and their desires. Racism is not an issue. Racism impacts a person. This is a defining spiritual moment that we are experiencing. Allow it to crack you open, to dissolve you into goo, so that you can experience transformation. When Jesus was actually describing his own death and his own ultimate transformation, he described that forthcoming experience as this idea of a kernel. And he says, unless this kernel of wheat is planted into the soil and it dies, it remains alone. But its death will produce many new kernels, a plentiful harvest of new life. And in the loss of that life, we actually find it. In the death of what we held as so important and valuable and significant and uniquely ours, when we die to that, when we let that be buried and go into the dark places, something else is allowed to be reborn. Something else comes to life. There is newness there. And we can see the long-term effects of that transformation because it will result in harvest. It will result in fruit. It will result in good things in our life, in our families, and in our world. I really am praying that right now in this moment in time, this historical period, that something deep and radical and other happens for us. So for all that is happening in your world, in my world, in our world, may you embrace what is cracking you open inside. May you allow the death and the darkness to produce something new in you so that you can live and lead with wholeness, so that you can do that in a way that is supernatural, that results in a harvest and a fruit and good transformational work. May this season transform you, not just inform you. And may you remember that we belong to one another. That is my prayer and blessing for you. Thank you for the honor and the privilege of being a part of your community today. Blessing and peace and love to you.